How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to TheBlueShifting, and welcome back to deep thinking, I guess you could call it. Very existential, these last few episodes, and I'm sure this one's not going to be any different. We're on the moon, in a place that seems to be kind of a between worlds, at least. It looks like that. I think Kagari is here looking over like the many world lines that are possible, and she's kind of trying to work out maybe the path that she thinks is best, or maybe she's simply looking for a viable path, some kind of future where things are going to work out. And like I was theorizing before, is like maybe these ends of the world, these songs of devastation, are just her pruning paths that just don't work. And so her core is here, so she might die in these various, world lines that we've witnessed, but they're not really her. This is the real her. And it's almost like an avatar of her that's venturing through. When she's staring at the board, like that's her kind of projecting into different routes and probably working faster than we can comprehend. Anyway, that's just a theory. Kotarou decided to use his ReWrite ability to try and enhance his mind rather than his physical body, and he ascended pretty much as high as he could, but luckily had something to tie him back before he went so high that he kind of lost track of like his own existence. So he came back down, and that was kind of the end of last episode. It's like he touched really high enlightenment to try and push himself so he could comprehend what she's working on, and was able to come back down, if barely. He did reach a limit, like a point where it just wasn't possible for him to continue to absorb information. Like he would have had to push himself so far that he really would have been leaving humanity behind, and probably would have died. So it's good. He's probably pretty smart right now, but it's also like not smart. Like his comprehension has been expanded to insane levels, but that doesn't make him necessarily more intelligent. It just means that he can actually grasp concepts that are much higher brow, and like, and by grasping, I don't think it means like, oh, that's theoretically. It's like, I was talking about it last time. It's like, you can think about and grasp like the size of the universe, but truly understanding what that means is a whole other ballpark. And I think that's what he could do now. It's like he can actually comprehend what that means. And it was cool, like having this dichotomy where like he felt like as he learned more, everything started feeling flavorless. Like there was no emotion or meaning or purpose to what he was learning. And then eventually he kind of circled back around and got high enough to where he learned that love is actually like really high up in that chart as an emotion and a drive and a motivator. And it's one of the more precious things. He only comprehended a small fragment of what it is like in the higher echelons of like true understanding. And so it's funny to see that come around and be like, love lost meaning when you realize, oh well, most of it's mostly just chemicals in the brain, and it's pathways of survival. It's things that help humanity thrive to get to this point in existence. But then it comes back around, and I was asking that point the question too, be like, there's just because there's a chemical backing and that there's a kind of a selfish biological like necessity built into the romance, the feelings of romance that we feel, doesn't make that any less beautiful. In fact, I think it makes it more beautiful. And I think that's kind of what he started to find in his own right. Except he specifically was talking about discovering the love of sacrifice, the love of being able to offer up and harm yourself in order to preserve and protect another. And that as being like one of the truest forms of actual love, which is really cool. Anyway, not rambling. It's going to be a nice chill. I'm going to kind of reminisce and kind of learn more about this mental space and Kagari, hopefully. So yeah. Thank you so much. Looking forward to hearing your comments. I really appreciate like all the work and everything you put into just supporting the channel. So thank you so much. Let's jump right in. Kagari's theory. It's the theory of life. She chronicles all the flowcharts in it, a flowchart that forms the shape of a giant tree. Broadly speaking, it advances in parallel with time. At the starting point and the roots are the accounts of the world's beginning. While it's incredibly obtuse, I can assert one thing from it. If the theory of life shared an origin with the world, then life is an inextricable part of the world. I still don't know what that means, though. Okay, so like basically what that sentence was saying in its purest form is saying the idea that like our planet, for whatever reason, we've talked about how like the planet is alive. It seems that the planet being alive and having life on the planet are kind of tied together. So like an extinction level event on the planet might also be the death of the planet. Other planets that don't have life might not actually be alive or can attain any type of life of their own, which is something I was speculating on. So like, does Mars, if Earth is alive, is Mars alive? And Maybe this is postulated no. Maybe it's a symbiotic relationship, or simply the fact that life is life, if that makes any sense. That the existence of life permeates itself through all things, even if they seem inanimate. Which is interesting, but it kind of starts to flow into some very weird quantum theory stuff you could technically try and speculate on, but again, I don't know, it starts crossing into super theories territory and rather away from anything scientific in any way. That's just what I get from what's written in the theory. Life in those early times is described as aurora. The name means dawn in Latin. I wasn't aware before, but it's also where the term aurora borealis comes from. It's also used to mean life and omnipotence, but it can be translated into a more appropriate word, miracle. Okay, so the miracle of life. Life in its essence was almost like a pure energy rather than a simple, like, biological form. That may sound like a cop-out, but I promise you it's not. It's sort of a paradox. We call life a miracle because it's impossible to explain via the laws of physics. Well, not impossible, but like, why it played out the way that it did. Like, we know how it all functions, but no one can really point to it and say, like, oh, this is why it actually happened. Like, that's what we can't say, because, like, there's a lot of, I don't know, it's very chaotic. Like, the way to get the bare bones of, like, how do complex amino acids coordinate to self-perpetuate? Because that's essentially what the beginning of what life is, because the core of our, like, genetic code and the basic, like, organelles inside our cells, which were likely different microscopic organisms that came together in a mutually beneficial way, formed a barrier around themselves to protect each other and keep each other from getting lost, and then boom, there's your first cell. But why did those organelles evolve independently if they were, because now they do specialized tasks, like, so how did they subsist without those? And if they could subsist on their own, why would they bond together? And how did those first amino acid chains even happen? Like, our best guess at this point is just you get a pool of the right conditions, and eventually things will just work themselves out. And that might be true, but like, why? And that's what he said. That's what it's saying. It's impossible to explain via the laws of physics, because you just take like a soup of amino acids, if if that's what the early Earth had, and give it energy. Why would it just make life? Like, how would life structure itself like it is now? Long, long ago, the world just used to be very small. I'm talking about before the cosmos and the celestial bodies were formed. It was an extremely limited world of less than 1 cubic centimeter. It was tiny, hot, and violent. Imagine every substance that exists in our universe condensed into that tiny space, and you can get an idea of the incredible pressure. Not even the most resilient creature could survive it. Yet life was born from it. That life must have been distinct from any form of action or reaction. It must have no causal relationship to matter. Otherwise, it would have been torn apart by the environment. Thinking of it like a ghost, an existence of zero. We cannot explain life without the unprecedented miracle. There are a lot of instances like this throughout scientific thought. Now, at some point, the world began to explosive expansion. Okay, all right. So again, he's saying that like there was a form of life beyond the comprehensive scale that existed pre-Big Bang and was likely the catalyst of the Big Bang. Which you could argue that's interesting. Like, if you want to see a really thought-provoking like concept of like trying to interpret what that could be, highly recommend playing the game Outer Wilds, which is almost like a philosophical journey, if nothing else. Fantastic game. I don't want to say any more about it, but I will say that like. I've never seen a better explanation for how you could have life existing before the Big Bang and why that might matter. Like, it does a great job explaining like conceptually that, but not in a way it's like shoving it down your throat. It just shows you in a really, really cool way. So fantastic, absolutely must play game. So we got life that is existent and before, and that life would exist like exist before matter, before time. So that's like. Again, life existing in a format and a plane of existence and causality and sections that just defies everything we know about our universe. So trying to figure out what that life would be like would be purposeless. It would be so beyond and so alien. It's almost like, what's the point? We can't even possibly recreate those like the environment that life became in. So yeah, don't even try. Probably can't try. And also, he's talking about this idea of, I want to see exactly what it was. Yeah, I guess he's just talking about pre-Big Bang. Okay, we'll keep moving on. One after another, birth, action, and reaction. Laws, physics, matter, stars, metals. It's still expanding to this day. In the beginning, life probably floated along in this violent world free from matter. Then, for some reason, it settled on a planet. Life can't develop without the perfect environment. The universe is a harsh place. If we calculate the probability of life occurring, it's close to 0. Well, that's tough. The probability of life forming in as far as we understand it is close to 0. But that means that you have to accumulate that life can only develop on a planet in a system like ours. It's very possible. We've even hypothesized that it's very likely you could see other structured like life forming in other environments, because we assume that the most important component to life on our world is having an element that can exist in 3 states of matter in the range of temperatures that's acceptable, which is water. The fact that water can exist as a solid, liquid, and a gas simultaneously, which allows for things like weather and cycles, and it just provides a stable environment. And once you have stability and modes and means and measures of things to change and fluctuate, that's kind of creating a good environment for water-based life forms. So there's an argument to be made that instead of a carbon-based system, you could use a silicon-based system, which is has similar elemental properties to carbon and can bond to very similar elemental groups in very similar ways. So theoretically, silicon-based life is a very likely thing out there. And what's the odds of that? Similar, but that means that the odds of life is probably higher than what this calculation is referencing. This is just saying, hey, how likely are we to find another planet like ours out there? Close to 0. Some even argue that the existence of such exact conditions is a statistical impossibility. Yet here we are. The energy and forces within the planet helped birth life. I never realized, it never relied on mere coincidence. The environment created its own order from the chaos. That is the nature of life. Like divine providence. But the Aurora had no will of its own. Okay, so he's saying that, like, because the essence and the core of what makes life exists outside of, like, the functional body of what we interpret as life, then all it was doing was scouring the universe looking for the proper conditions. In that regard, it probably didn't have to dictate itself to a carbon-based life system, for instance. It just needed to find a place where life could begin, where life could take up a physical form, and it found this planet. It was just a planet that happened to meet the conditions. Very unlikely, but it was there. It was no more than an instinct to arrange the necessary circumstances to bring forth life. Which is why we cannot call it God. Then somehow the Aurora birthed the key. Okay, so the Aurora is acting almost animalistic in and of itself. It doesn't have a will, it just was behaving as it should. To destroy civilization. I'm not sure about this part. I tried to cram it too much at once. My overloaded brain groans within my skull. I need to take a break. Beside me, Kagari continues her research with a single-minded dedication. She's currently working on a section for one of the branches. The thick, trunk-like root splinters off into branches that spread out fan-like. Each branch is thin and fragile, and they soon wither. Does this represent the end of the world? It's too complex, beyond my comprehension. Yeah, I think so. I think those are the world lines that she's pruning. I need coffee. Time for a pick-me-up. Mannequins dressed to the nines pose in windows, and shelves display their rows of wares. In every department store, the aisles are filled with food and toys. None of it ever goes bad or gets dusty. It continues to exist in the exact same state. I can get anything I need. Although I don't really need anything as I am now. I take in the sights of the stores, and when I long to feel the moonlight on my skin, I wander the streets between them. Something flashes across my vision. There are no other dwellers of this eternal night, ethereal night. Must have imagined it. No. Something is moving. Okay, that's disturbing, actually. What could that be? A small, swift shadow. It moves from building to building, kicking off the walls. I can't focus on it. Each time it leaps away just before my eyes can reach it. All I'm left with is a faint afterimage. It's too small to be a human child, too large to be a mouse. And too fast to be either of them. Could it be a familiar like Panny and Gil, maybe? I need to get a better look. Its speed may be too much for me, but it can make up for it with intellect. Its movements are incredibly predictable. By anticipating its next moves, I'll be able to get behind it. It's gonna be right here. Feigning a dash and the momentum of the kick off a wall to land right in front of the shadow. Weird. The small creature huddles in the middle of the road. I still can't tell what it is. It's not a dog or cat. It's a creature I've never seen before. I get the feeling it's not any sort of defined animal. Like it's nothing more than a concept of a small creature. You'd better catch it and examine it. What the fetch are you? That's really weird. It's almost like a mockery of life, like someone who stitched stuff together. It's a really interesting conceptual construct as well. One of the it's funny because like it's an app, but like the Fate Grand Order story is actually pretty interesting. Most of it's very meh, but there's a few like storylines that are genuinely like absolutely captivating and enjoyable. One of them was the Babylonia arc, which actually got an anime. The anime is pretty solid. I imagine if you watched it without knowing what the game is or what it's about, it'd be just really weird and confusing, but there is something really of interest there. They are creatures. They are meant to be the new humans. Because in this world, like the world is being destroyed in history. Like history is being erased by something intervening. And this intervention is the rise of the old god Tiamat, who is wanting to recreate the world that rejected her, because humanity used to worship Tiamat and then stopped. And so she tries to rebirth a new people. And these new people are these twisted amalgamations, kind of similar to this, with weird mouths and eyes, and their only enjoyment is to destroy and just tear apart. They devour other humans and absorb some of their memories and kind of like it's very Eldridgian, and that's kind of what this reminds me of. Even in its basic concept and design, it reminds me a lot of that. Its shadow's mouth moves, emitting a whisper. You are not the key. What? Did it say key? The shadow softens and blurs. It moves closer. The creature loses its shape, turning into a dark fog. It spreads out and then it's gone. I know exactly what it is. A familiar. But what is it doing here? I sip on the coffee hot enough to scald my tongue. Kagari drinks too. Clutching her mug in both hands, she blows on it like a bulgur. What's a bulgur? Before gulping down the liquid in one go. After quickly draining her drink, she returns to her research. It's so quiet. Silence rules the night. In her process of revising her theory, Kagari occasionally cuts out sequences and discards them. They twist and writhe like fish swimming through the sky, then splash to the ground and sink into it. I want to see which parts she's getting rid of, but I haven't had the opportunity. Then as I'm resting, Kagari just happens to cut out a part. And as the formula wriggles in the air, I'm able to catch it. Gotcha. Location, ocean, geology poor, natural resources, considerable barriers to life. The heck is this about? This is the history of the Earth. Information about how the surrounding area was once a sea. It's hard to imagine what cutting out this information would change and in what way. But if Kagari deemed it unnecessary, then it has to mean something. I release it. It flees, scattering zeros and ones and... Oh, what is that symbol supposed to be? E's, but like what is that? As it goes. I have an idea. I can't converse with Kagari, but I might be able to communicate my intent to her with numbers. Amicable numbers are probably best, as they're easy to understand. Pairs of numbers where the sum of the proper divisory of each is equal to the other. The numbers themselves are different, but when looked at from a mathematical perspective, they're close and familiar. I grab 2 pieces of notepaper. I write 284 on one and 220 on the other. Then I tap Kagari on the shoulder. I pass her the note that says 284 and she stares intently at the figure. On its own, it means nothing. When she looks up at me, I show her my piece of paper with 220 on it. Is this gonna work? For a while, there's no response from her. In subjective time, she gives no response for around 3 months. Jeez. Whoa, what? Hello? And then, I can hardly believe it, she flushes and looks down. You're kidding me! I'm totally flustered. Without even thinking about what I'm doing, I get to my feet and run through the forest and rip off my shirt. I need to bare my skin. Why? I couldn't tell you. I run at full speed, yet it doesn't calm the emotions roiling within me, so they explode out of me. Boomerang! I shout and I leap. A tree branch crashes into my stomach and my body bending around it in the shape of a boomerang. Coughing up blood, I crumple to the ground. At last, I'm calm. And dying. Clutching my head, I groaned weakly, overcome with shame. Well, I wasn't expecting that. I wonder if emotions here ride extra high for some reason. I get up and head to the hill. I don't need to sleep, but recently I've been taking naps. It's because the burden on me has grown. Because I've been looking over the theory together with Kagari. Nosebleeds and headaches are a common side effect of absorbing such high-density information. When I lie down at home to rest, memories rise to the surface of my mind like bubbles, and I can't tell whether I'm flesh and blood or merely a phantom. I can't believe that jumbled memories from my infancy and lamentations of my youth are real. I've already made peace with the idea that I myself may not be real. But Kagari is. I'm supposed to be her assistant, and yet I can hardly say I'm doing a good job at it. I wish there was something I could really do to help. Then there would be some value in me being here. Kagari isn't there. This is unusual. All that's left behind is a blueprint for the theory. There's nothing quite like gazing at the moon alone. I sit down and look at the theory. It spreads out in the shape of a giant tree. The research is about 98% complete. Only 2% left to go. I start reading from the roots and eventually making it up to the fan of branches. I skip over the parts I don't understand. That means I only get a vague understanding, but it's fine. The theory of life is a history of evolution. By now, I know it better than even the most qualified scholar of the subject. Oh, that's because you're getting to look at it. I know all about the process by which nucleic acids come together to form the building blocks for life. About the reactions that took place under the Earth's reducing atmosphere. About the chicken and the egg. Even an omnipotent power can't conjure life like a parlor trick. Or it could, but it would be nothing more than a fleeting imitation. Ecosystems must be maintained over time. This requires the process known as evolution. The omnipotent power helped create life by exerting its influence on the environment. So, the omnipotent power he's meaning is the life that is directing all of this, but he even said that it isn't really fair to call it a god because it was acting off of instinct rather than off of intent, right? But he's talking about it like it was doing something by intention. I think you know the rest. Everything proceeds along the path of evolution. Eventually, life arrived at the form of humanity and civilization was birthed. The birth of civilization occurred only in the very final moment of the Earth's history. When the tree of life reaches the stage where humans are developing civilization, it abruptly starts to branch off. I don't know the cause. I can't read most of what's at the end of those branches. This is so frustrating. Isn't there some tiny part I can read? I investigate each branch one by one. Fragmented information streams into my eyes as visual data. The information is weak and diluted. It's like picking up an individual phonemes that don't amount to any meaningful words. It's like little fragments of words. Like if you only heard every fourth syllable of an entire paragraph, would you be able to make much sense out of it? Probably not. Oh, that's cool. I bet if you watched all that in slow motion, it was stills from one of the routes. I don't know if I could have caught enough to be able to know which route that was, though. I know all this. I have the same exact same memories. That's how I'm able to decode it. Does this record the entirety of history of humanity? It's all here are these branches. It shows the other possibilities. I can't be, but it's the only way it makes sense. Countless branches sprout, consuming vast amounts of energy. That's why they're much thinner than the trunk. And then they all start to wither at once. What does this mean? Is it Kagari's will, or is it the will of the planet? Why? Or what if it's neither? What if humanity simply... Okay, so... Alright, I'm picturing a certain amount, an amount like this. So imagine that life is a pool of energy like a tank of gas, right? In your car. You can drive down the road, you can tank a gas. Your gas can last you several hundred miles, say. Go about 150 miles, you use half your gas, right? Then you get somewhere and you find a car park. And the car park is full of about 20 other cars. But they're smaller cars, they're like little buggies. They have gas tanks that are much, much smaller. They don't need as much to get going, but they have no fuel. You have the fuel to move things, and you want to move all of them down because they all are very eager and full of like riders and potential that want to go and move. So you take the rest of your fuel and divide it up amongst these little cars. The little buggies can't go as far, but they can all now travel, and you can see which paths they choose to take. But it also is exhausting the fuel that you have left. So instead of simply letting them all go and letting them all die, the will of the planet is to say, okay, which buggy is going to take a path that's going to lead to the brightest possible future for everything. So you let them go a little while and see how they do. And then slowly, as they make poor choices or get stuck or end up in a ditch somewhere, you collect the fuel that they didn't get to use or were too dumb to use or just refused to use, and recollect it and redistribute it back out to the other branches. Because that might be what the problem is. What if life, this life entity, this life essence that existed before the Big Bang, only has so much energy in it? And this is but because it exists beyond time as a pure entity and force of itself, it doesn't have to wait for all these branches to occur. It just simply has to acknowledge that they're there, spread out the energy a little bit to see how they do, and then prune away the ones that aren't going to go anywhere and try and maintain a balance of energy to allow humanity to extend further along that journey. But it's running into a problem. The destination is still too far away, and there's not enough energy to get it there. That's what Kagari's doing. She's trying to preserve energy by snipping off worlds that don't really go anywhere useful. Even if they had some potential, which got them that far, they ultimately were on a path of pittering out, which is what the judgment's all about to begin with. Why? That's my guess. Interesting. Look at that. It's funny, because that actually reminds me of a genetic sequencing chart. At the moment of my intense slight burst of emotion, a strange shift occurs. The drawings begin to function as a correspondence table. The information shared between me and the branches has become the key to solving the cipher. Whoa. The surrounding's high-density information begins to transform. It's going beyond the processing limits of the receiver. That's saying he's gonna break. Uh-oh. I try to cut it off, but I'm too late. The information flows into me. Information. Form. Life. What life is talking to him. It's trying to speak to him. Search results. Life is esoteric thing. The probability of life spontaneously occurring during the time period span of the dawn of the universe or its destruction is 0.00000000002%. Aurora, the energy that facilitates the creation of life under the influence of the strong gravitational force. Gravity leaks out from the universe to other dimensions in the same way as thought to omnipotent power. Diffusion has been observed to endlessly recreate itself with it reference of history to prior activity to the end. The urge to disperse functions as a form of instinct from the omnipotent power. Should we read all of that? Because I kind of want to. Alright, so I got that. Aurora, omnipotent power. The energy that facilitates the creation of life under the influence of strong gravitational force. It coalesces and accumulates on the surface of a planet. Omnipotent power. Under controlled conditions, it may liquefy at standard temperature. Okay. Gravity leaks out from the universe into other dimensions, and in the same way, it is thought that the omnipotent power diffuses between the dimensional and cosmological space. Mesh theory of evolution. Okay. So it's just following mesh theory, but with an evolutionary twist. We're saying gravity bleeds through the dimensional barrier, which is what we actually think can and does happen. Like, that's why black holes become these like voids. Is that because like you can't just destroy energy or matter, but that's what black holes seem to do. Because like they do expel things, and we know that better now with Hawking radiation. But there's still an amount that just doesn't seem to exist anymore. Because black holes, they grow, but they don't seem to grow the way they should, if that makes sense. So they believe that maybe they bleed through into other universe potentials. But then the multi-world theory, it talks about like why this could happen, and that would also mean that we're hoping to see bleed through into our universe as well, because that would be an indication. That's what they tried to look for with a lot of the CERN collisions. They're trying to see, and they are seeing, I believe, when they get those two protons to smash into each other, they destroy each other. and we record the material that comes out, and the material and the building blocks of the protons isn't all that's there. More stuff emerges when those two collide. Like, so you have like a set amount of material. It'd be like taking like a baseball and you smash them together, and when you take all the pieces and like weigh them, there's more than 2 baseballs worth of baseball there. Like, that's how bizarre that is. And so we're like, we believe that it's a mesh theory, or like mesh theory is an explanation for that it bleeds through from another universe where you have like a lot of mass and energy and gravity that bleed through and bleed out happens. And it happens in a balanced proportional state, because that way the system stays in check. If it were just one directional, it'd be a lot more obvious, because over billions of years, it would the universe would either gain more or lose mass, and we'd probably be able to detect that, or we potentially could. Anyway, so they're saying that life energy operates on a similar system, where life energy can bleed through and exchange between different dimensional branches. Again, this is kind of highlighting the idea, that tank of gas theory I had, where Kagari is trying to prevent the world from just dying out across all the branches, and is trying to cultivate energy and flow it towards the best potential outcome. But that means she has to kill these other branches. Omnipotent power has been observed to endlessly recreate itself with reference to the history of the prior activities. To this end, the urge to disperse functions as a form of instinct in the omnipotent power. Re-evolution. The self-preservation instinct that dwells within the omnipotent power. It works to reduce the resources lost that life would generate via its continuous existence when trapped at an impasse, the recycling of life. Again, pruning, reevaluating, kind of collecting fuel from the paths that weren't so great and giving it towards the ones that are still progressing. As the omnipotent power becomes more constrained, a large-scale oscillation phenomena occurs, with sentient life at its center. In the case that the surface area of the celestial body is less than a specific amount, this oscillation will repeatedly be extended in mesh-patterned waves. It will seek the means to survive along a plurality of avenues. Oh. So it's saying that life progressed relatively stably until people started running into each other too much, essentially. That we started to outgrow our resources, and then the omnipotent life force, whatever that is, starts branching out in these multiple timelines to try and suss out the best path to take, because it realizes that there's a limited amount of resources, almost like how gas products and fuel. Like, will we run out someday? I mean, we can't always use it. Eventually, it's a capped resource. There's like only so much out there. And as we drain those resources, eventually we're going to hit a tipping point where we're going to have to start genuinely, like, not just like, oh, it's a good idea to invest in alternatives. It's going to be like, we have to invest in alternatives. And that's kind of what life is doing. Life force is saying, okay, we're running into the point where there's going to be no path forward if we continue. So we got to branch out, find the best path, and then stick with it. Phylogenetic tree of possibilities. Due to the consumption of resources within a short time period, the amalgamated omnipotent power is abruptly released into the atmosphere, and the plurality of the oscillations reaches out from the temporal axis toward the future. The dispersive pressure contained within the omnipotent power pushes it toward the future. In other words, it grows outward in a tangle of tree branches, just like a real plant. Garden civilization. A form of Type 1 civilization on a celestial body of limited surface area in which the rewriting of physical contents is facilitated. Life's existence becomes easier with such limited civilizations. Yet at the same time, it lacks the material power, and as such, it's difficult to raise intelligent life to a higher level. So, you get homeostasis, but progression ceases. What the heck? This theory cannot be observed in any valid answer to the question. It recommends revisiting the contents of the question and breaking up the question to input. So this chart we're looking at is like, it's been interpreted as when trying to communicate with his brain, it kind of facilitated a communication method probably based on his own experience, which is a computer system. It's choosing to interact with him like a computer might. Hell is this info? The theory cannot offer a valid answer to this question. What is life? This question cannot be answered. There is a possibility that it would break the mind of the reader. Oh, well, that's nice that the theory is conveniently intelligent enough to not break us. Just tell me. This theory will take no responsibility for any negative effects, mental or otherwise. Sustained by the reader due to accessing this information. Do you consent? Place your input now. Yes, no. Do I actually get to choose? No matter what happens, Kagari definitely ain't taking no responsibility. Capiche? Celestial being. Higher priority entered. Access restriction. Access denied to all omniscient life forms. Ah! I hit by an intense pain, like all the nerves have been exposed and doused with acid. Ugh. Jaw. Yeah, I'd be screaming too. That sounds awful. Nausea, choking, convulsing. It's too much all at once. I fell writhing to the ground. Out of my mind, I thrash my arms out. My aurora explodes out like never before. Blades form, transform, splinter apart, slicing recklessly through everything around me. My eyelids spasm, forcing my eyes to stay open. And the influx of information has ceased, but I've already taken in a lethal dose. I scream. It's the cry of a wild beast. Kagari comes running. She tosses me the flask she's carrying. Go away. Don't come any closer, I'm dangerous. But my voice won't come out. Kagari kneels down and pulls my head in her lap. Instantly, her ribbons multiply, seeking out and coiling around each of my blades. But one slips through and slices her cheek. Her blood glistens red and green. I continue to scream with violent, wordless emotion. I scream out the secrets of the universe. I can break my mind I can break the mind of any human who hears, infecting it like a brown spot fungus and sending them immediately into unconsciousness. Lie there and die, puny humans. I'll blacken each and every leaf. You too, Kagari. I will drain the nectar from your blossom. That sounds really weird out of context. Diplicara ponrosa. I am the black spot on your leaves. Kagari's ribbons form into a blade and slice off my head. Probably for the best. I scatter and come together. I'm on the hill again. Kagari's there as always. Sorry. Guess I read something I shouldn't have. She stares sadly at me. I wasn't thinking. That was scary. The truth was too much for me to handle. I'm glad you killed me. A faint cut remains along her cheek. Sorry about that. I made you waste some of your precious energy. I meant to help, but all I did was interfere. Even more than feeling powerless, I feel pathetic and ashamed. I stand still. Kagari comes over to me. She's holding something out. It's a mug. Steam rises from inside. She got us coffee. Coffee, huh? She must have brewed it herself. I can't imagine her doing that. I raise the cup to my lips. I feel something rough and sandy on my tongue. Looks like she put the grounds directly into the water. I guess she doesn't know about filtering. It isn't exactly appealing. Kagari must have realized something was off too. But she doesn't bother to investigate the source. She's too far above that. Kagari is different from humans as the lofty stars are from the lowly pebble. Our meeting is like a tryst of a scholar with a cell through the microscope. That's a great analogy. I drink down all the gritty coffee. When I'm finished, Kagari invites me over to her research. I sit beside her as usual. Her research is reaching its climax. It's obvious from her condition. The further it progresses, the weaker she becomes. The theory of life isn't merely academic. It corresponds directly to real-life events. All information gathers here at Kagari's feet. Like concentrating the sun's light through the lens of a single spot, that's why the theory is. The moon on the surface of a lake. An image cast by reality. Kagari's the one who searches. A type of function, so to speak. Kagari is seeking possibilities. For the existence of life. I have a vision. A single tree grows inside a building. Although it spreads its branches, its growth is obstructed by the walls and the roof. One by one, the branches wither. Kagari's research is searching for a hole. If a hole can be found, even then just a single branch could survive. Even Kagari doesn't know whether or not there is a hole to be found. Yeah. I think it's talking about the existential dread that is being trapped on this world. We're very likely to kill this planet ourselves, which is exactly what the Gaia versus Guardian fight's all about, really. But just as likely, actually inevitably, the world will die. We could do a perfect job from here on out. And eventually this planet will no longer be able to support life. And we will have to either have found a way out or just die with the planet. We're doomed unless we can A, stop killing ourselves, and B, find a way to find off the planet and to have a sustainable, productive and expansive life on another world. We just have to do it. Like, it's inevitable one way or the other. Either we die or we do it. One of those two happen. And she's saying she's trying to find the way that gets us there. Because it's all a phenomena. The branches spread out, working as a search function for possibilities. Oh, okay. Yeah, it's almost like an AI program that's searching the internet for things. But in this case, it's like, or a better example would be a supercomputer running simulations, where the simulations are like real. Like, oh, maybe it's not though. Like, that's the whole idea. Like, that could be the argument for like, we might all live in a simulation. We might. What if that is what we're doing? Is we're in a simulation that's just so defined and so specific and so high caliber that as part of that simulation, we can't self-actualize ourselves, knowing that whether or not we are in a simulation. And that's why the world branches being cut off isn't really that tragic, because none of them technically existed, even though if you were in them, you would be convinced it existed. Kind of like how when you dream at night. In your dreams, in the moment, it feels real. Feels like 100% real, like you're convinced. As soon as you leave it, you're like, oh, okay, that was fine. That was just a dream. But like in the moment, like if you were to ask yourself, like, is this real? You'd be like, heck yeah, it is. And then you wake up and you're like, oh yeah, I can't have been a dragon. That's ridiculous. It's a very dramatic process. Now I know why Kagari takes them to the same form as the key. The key will destroy the world. This will be repeated again and again, no matter which possibility it attempts to pursue. What motivates her? Hatred? I don't think so. The key's behavior doesn't align with any such strong emotion. Rather, it seems emotionless, even machine-like. It's clear the key is not bringing about destruction out of malice. To put a name to it, I'd call it instinct. The key is the instinct of the cosmos. Similar to the innate instinct of all living creatures, it is a mechanism to increase the chances of life thriving. For example, people fall in love without having to be taught how to. At the root of this is the innate desire to leave behind offspring. So what does the instinct of the planet crave? It's probably the same whether talking about people or instinct of planets. Propagation. Most organisms want to have offspring while they're young. In the same way, the planets want to leave behind their progeny while they still have energy. And so, the key introduces re-evolution to the point when civilization begins to waste resources, so that it can hit the reset button before the energy is depleted. Of course, this is a great calamity for the human race at the time. But to the planet, it's merely a manifestation of its all-consuming desire for survival. Like, why let everything die when you can just prune a little bit and start over? There is no ill will in it. After thinking it through this far, I shudder. This all meant that Kagari I see before me now is simple. Simply, my entire body trembles. Kagari. When I call her name, she looks my way. I lean in toward her. And then, for the briefest moment, my lips brush hers. What the? Whoa, okay. What? Through it all, she remains blank. Although she mimics the form of a person, she isn't human. So even a sudden kiss doesn't have an effect. How dull. I can't help but laugh. When it comes down to it, Kagari is simply a phenomena. An existence that personifies the instinct of a planet. Yet I felt just the slightest sense of an autonomous will from her. The intent of Kagari as an individual. I'm probably the only human who can come here. Which means I'm the only one who can be your friend, and that's what I want to do. I'll protect you, Kagari. She stares blankly at me. I know she doesn't understand. But even if all creation amounts to no more than emotionless physics, I want to find my own significance within it. I want to protect this delicate phenomena. Okay. Interesting. At one point, Kagari collapses. Oh, fetch. Kagari! In the middle of her research, she pitches forward under her face unconscious. And it throws me into confusion. Can't exactly call an ambulance for her. Up close, I can see how frayed and dirty she is. She's constantly expending energy on her research. The branch worlds have extended to an almost infinite number. They scramble for possibilities, bursting with the drive to survive, but she hasn't yet found an exit. Hey? Kagari's come to a stop, although the switch has been flipped. I bite my lip. Here goes nothing. I slice a single drop of Aurora from my wrist and drop it onto Kagari's lips. It's an intuitive response, but I think it's the right one. Sure enough, before long, she opens her eyes. Are you ready to stop? Or will you keep going? I'll keep along with whatever you choose. I don't know whether she understood me. Dazedly, she gets back up and goes back to running her fingers over the tree of life. Beside her, I reach out and touch a single branch. Occasionally, I find branches of information with low enough density for me to scrutinize. There is a common characteristic shared by these worlds. In all of the possibilities, the key is successfully eliminated. Okay. So the ones where she's eliminated are a little more simplistic, but that might be because they're doomed to end. If the key is killed, the destruction won't happen. This was the prediction upon which the hunters based their efforts. It's the same in this branch right here. After learning the secrets of the world, Kotarou helped me escape from my pursuers, and then I began to work together with Kagari. The fate of the world was in our hands, although I could hardly believe it. The organization was relentless in their pursuit. I was prepared to die, but looking back on it now, I realized that they weren't after our lives. They were looking for an opportunity. A moment when a chink would appear in our defenses. And then it happened. The death of the key. The world escaped its destruction. This time, at least. So was that with Kotarou? Yeah. Oh, so Kotarou helped him escape, and he worked with Kagari. So maybe that's the one where, like, they left Kotarou behind with her parents, and they actually managed to get away, like he and the key. This time, at least. After that, Kotarou and I returned to our normal lives. Okay, so she was there. We went on to live our lives, complete with all the trials and tribulations. If the key is eliminated, there will be no destruction. Instead, the foot holding down the brake on the consumption of resources will be removed. The key will be reconstituted sooner or later, but it will take hundreds of years at the minimum. Centuries may be the equivalent of a blink of an eye in the objective term, but humanity will run out of resources well before then. They'll be out of time. It makes sense to think that destruction is a mechanism to start over before resources are completely depleted. The result is that the world quickly falls to ruin. The collapse of civilization. In other words, people are no longer able to live as they once did. It's a dog-eat-dog world like in some post-apocalyptic manga. And then, a mere 100 or so years later, extinction. Killing the key is a short-sighted solution. So what can be done to consider the world truly saved? Would everything be reconciled if the key were left to destroy the world and restart evolution all over again? But even in that scenario, it still results in the world as we know it being destroyed. I witnessed it with Akane. That time, our salvation swallowed the planet. That too resulted in the demise of civilization. A small group of people were able to escape into the artificial world, but civilization cannot endure within such a closed insular environment. Ultimately, it would fall to ruin. Those few remaining people would slide peacefully into their demise. I can see some value in it, but it doesn't change the fact that hope for the future would be lost. And so, each branch would wither and comes to an end. Even when utilizing re-evolution, we're destined for failure. So what to do? Migrate to a different planet. That would solve everything. But it would be a near impossible task. It would take millennia to terraform the moon or Mars into a habitable environment. How would a colossal cost be financed under the international diplomacy or world of the stage of development? Although another dead end. Kagari can't find a way out even with her intellect. More and more often, her fingers, which used to dance lightly over the page, fall still. During those moments, she sheds silent tears. Even a phenomena can cry, huh? She's so frustrated, trying to find a way for us to live. I wipe away her tears. She pays no heed, perhaps not even aware that she's crying. The tears slide down her face as she stands still as a statue, looking like a sculpture bathed in moonlight. She needs rest and comfort. Interesting. I decide to take her with me. Pulling her by the hand, I lead her into town. I thought she would resist being dragged away from her theory, but she doesn't oppose me. We walk down the hill. We stroll along the deserted roads to the uninhabited townscape. The buildings have been overtaken by greenery, making the place feel like a post-apocalyptic land centuries after humanity's been wiped out. We wander around, gazing into store windows, exploring ivory-covered buildings, and pausing on the crosswalk to stare down an endless road. Hi. Kagari allows me to pull her along. She says nothing, her face expressionless. I hold fancy clothes up to her and pin a clip to her hair, but all the while she keeps her face downturned. There's no rush. We have all the time in the world. This night is endless. I lead her around, exerting enough force to move her along. We go up to the roof of a big apartment block. Turns out not to be as tall as I thought. Other buildings surround us, blocking our view. Too low. Looks like that one over there's a bit taller. Want to try flying over to it? For some reason, I'm in the mood to fly. I scale the fence, pull Kagari up too. Then I lean forward and brace my legs, waiting for the right moment. My body floats. We land on the adjacent building as softly as the dust that dances in the air accumulates on the ground. Well, now that we're here, the other one over there is taller, isn't it? Like we fly again, from building to building. God, this sounds so sweet, actually. This sounds nice. Gradually moving higher and higher. At last, we alight atop the tallest structure. Of course, look at that. The town spread out before us, its green contours submerged beneath silver moonlight. It's like the sinking into the ocean. Maybe because it's so quiet, like we're really underwater. Kagari's gaze remains fixed on her feet. The trick is taking a real break while studying for exams is to wipe all thoughts of the exam from your mind. You have to do something completely different to stimulate your brain. And don't think of it as wasted time. Take 2, even 3 full days off. But you can't just laze about. You gotta get well and truly enjoy yourself. Head out first thing in the morning and come back at night totally exhausted. The strange thing is, you'll wake up the next day refreshed and ready to dive into studying. I bet you're stuck in the rut because you've been doing the same thing for so long. If you let your hair down for a while, you'll get out of it. It'd be fun if we could scream our throats raw at karaoke or party with a bunch of friends, but if there's a motorcycle anywhere around here, it'd be invigorating just to ride around wherever you want. There ain't even any cars. The stores are fully stocked though, so maybe we could find something at a bike store. As I'm talking, I feel eyes on me. At some point, Kagari's turned her gaze toward me. So you're finally looking up. Although you still look pretty glum. Okay, let's make this a proper date. Hope you've got your dancing shoes on. But it's pretty sad without any music. Let's give it a go. I lean all kinds of things from my brush with the theory of life. I can do things I couldn't in the branch worlds. Things other than trying to become super powerful and bend the world to my will. The moonlight here somehow has a hint of life to it. I snap my fingers. Immediately, the quiet moonlight and settles in thick over the town begins to vibrate musically. I tune the sound into a melody I once knew. Dang, he's literally turning light beams into music. That's crazy. Kagari reacts. She displays an intellectual interest in the timbre of the life that she's hearing for the first time. Her ribbons billow spreading out across the roof. Haha, incredible. Not to be outdone, I change into a tailcoat. Never worn one before. Kagari's already dressed kind of appropriately, but I switch up her look a little too. Looking good. Would you do me the honor of a dance, milady? I ask her formally. When I hold out my hand, she places hers in it. Aww. Oh, now that's adorable. Even if she does no comprehension of it, that's adorable right there. Our dance is nothing complicated. We simply sway our bodies in time to the music. It's strange, the effect wearing something different can have. Our fingers intertwine as we spin. Like the earth and the moon, though not quite as elegant. It's kind of lonely without anyone else here. Suddenly, we're in a crowd. Silhouettes of ladies and gentlemen dressed in a finery surround us. Creating further details beyond me. The shadows murmur. They trade rumors about us, mimicking the gossip of high society. Finally, the shadows start to dance too. The gallant men and lovely ladies. All at once, the roof is transformed into a high society ball. It's a whimsical soiree where jaunty energy and deep sorrow mingle in the air. That's me, this sounds cool. Kagari quickly picks up on the tempo of the dance. She moves with fixed rigidity, seemingly content to do nothing more. But that's boring. I have other plans. I shake things up in my own style, abruptly breaking the rhythm. Kagari flounders. I can't help but chuckle. But I only have the advantage for a brief moment. Whoa! All of a sudden, she switches her pivot leg and I pitch forward. Just barely managing to avoid face planting, I stumble a few steps before righting myself. How embarrassing. The lords and ladies are snickering at me. Kagari's still dancing, looking smug about her successful ploy. Well, I'll be darned. Can't tell whether that was payback or whether she copied it from me, thinking it was another rule of the dance. Probably shouldn't speculate. We dance. We spin. In the town devoid of life, we go through the motions of having fun. I want to spend my time pointlessly. It's my act of rebellion. A tiny bit of revenge against those who know nothing. Even the moon's reflection has its pride. Those people will be saved. Those people who will be saved will never even be aware of our existence. They can't be, so long as they remain inside the space-time continuum. This vexes me somewhat, because Kagari will never get the recognition she deserves. It's true. Oh, yes? Kagari speaks to me. It hits me like a shockwave. Can't comprehend her speech. My brain won't process it. A wave of dizziness washes over me. Such high-level information is akin to poison. Our multi-layered speech requires the same processing level from the listener. I'm nowhere near it. My consciousness fades. Just before I black out completely, my gaze meets Kagari's. Her eyes are no longer strange. They're human. Her darkly glittering pupils are focused on me. She can discern me without needing to look through a microscope. Seems we might have made some kind of contact. Uh-oh. I sense danger. Ooh. Okay, we'll stop here for now. We'll get into the danger next time. I wonder if by shaking up and interacting with the key, the forces that be, or whatever entities out there, sees him as a threat. Maybe he's too distracting. Maybe he might potentially, leave the theory undone. His interfering might be causing too many problems, or humanizing her too much and keeping her. It might prevent her from committing to her duty, which is to try and save humanity at all cost, or life at all cost. So maybe something's gonna retaliate, which is what that little imp creature we saw was a manifestation of, the will to keep us from interfering, because we're not supposed to be here. Like a bacteria invading the body. Ooh, fun, fun, fun. Thank you so much for joining me. Hope you enjoyed yourselves. Thank you so much. We got a new patron / member. It's a channel membership, but still, thank you so much, and thank you everyone who's been a part of the channel. Whether you've committed, you help one time or a million, or continue to support to this day, thank you so much. It means the world to me that you're gonna go that extra step, and I just hope I can make it worth your while. Just again, in case you didn't know, if you are a patron or a member, all it really can give you, besides having access to patron casts occasionally, which are kind of backgrounds, hey, this is what's going on, this is the stuff I'm thinking about doing in the future. It gives you access to voting on changes on Tuesdays or on Fridays. Those I make narrow down the list based on the input from the general community, and then the final say when it gets to the point where I don't want to make the final decision, narrowed it down to a core list of 2 or 3 or 4. The patrons and the members are the ones that get to do the final say. So if that sounds a bit appealing to you, hey, I'd love to have your support, but don't feel like you have to. Just being here, watching videos is more than enough. Leaving a comment is especially helpful. Helps with the algorithm, helps the channel do more, flourish more, grow more. It means the world to me, because this is stuff I can't do by myself. Having a community is wonderful, and being able to be kind of a focal point for it is really cool. But a community's empty without other people, and it also can't grow really without other people. So it means the world to me. You're just as important to the content than I am. Yeah, I'm doing the work, but it reaches nobody without you. So thank you. I'm so grateful that you're here, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens next as we continue to explore this place beyond the space-time continuum. I wonder what it is that we're going to face. What are the dangers here? And it could talk to us. Remember that imp could talk, so it's intelligent, at least somewhat. So what's that all about? I'm real excited for next episode. Thank you so much for being here. And until this video watching me up, see me next. I'll see you there.